Welcome back. Continuing our Kybalion series, we're going to be reading from the Kybalion. We'll be continuing on to the sixth Hermetic principle, cause and effect, or as it's called here, causation. Let's get right into it. Causation. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. The Kybalion. The great sixth Hermetic principle, the principle of cause and effect, embodies the truth that law pervades the universe, that nothing happens by chance, that chance is merely a term indicating cause existing but not recognized or perceived. That phenomena is continuous, without break or exception. The principle of cause and effect underlies all scientific thought, ancient and modern, and was enunciated by the Hermetic teachers in the earliest of days. While many and varied disputes between the many schools of thought have since arisen, these disputes have been principally upon the details of the operations of the principle, and still more often upon the meaning of certain words. The underlying principle of cause and effect has been accepted as correct by practically all the thinkers of the world worthy of the name. To think otherwise would be to take the phenomena of the universe from the domain of law and order and to relegate it to the control of the imaginary something which men have called chance. A little consideration will show anyone that there is in reality no such thing as pure chance. Webster defines the word chance as follows: a supposed agent or mode of activity other than a force, law, or purpose. The operation or activity of such agent, the supposed effect of such an agent, a happening, fortuity, casualty, etc. But a little consideration will show you that there can be no such agent as chance, in the sense of something outside the law, something outside of cause and effect. How could there be something acting in this phenomenal universe independent of the laws, order, and continuity of the latter? Such a something would be entirely independent of the orderly trend of the universe and therefore superior to it. We can imagine nothing outside of the all being outside of the law, and that only because the all is the law in itself. There is no room in the universe for something outside of and independent of law. The existence of such a something would render all natural laws ineffective and would plunge the universe into chaotic disorder and lawlessness. A careful examination will show that what we call chance is merely an expression relating to obscure causes, causes that we cannot perceive, causes that we cannot understand. The word chance is derived from a word meaning to fall, as the falling of dice. The idea being that the fall of dice and many other happenings are merely a happening unrelated to any cause, and this is the sense in which the term is generally employed. And when the matter is closely examined, it is seen that there is no chance whatsoever about the fall of the dice. Each time a die falls and displays a certain number, it obeys a law as infallible as that which governs the revolution of the planets around the sun. Back of the fall of the die are causes or chains of causes, running back further than the mind can follow. The position of the die in the box, the amount of muscular energy expended in the throw, the condition of the table, etc., etc. All are causes, the effect of which may be seen. But back of these seen causes, there are chains of unseen preceding causes, all of which had a bearing upon the number of the die which fell uppermost. If a die be cast a great number of times, it will be found that the number shown will be about equal. That is, there will be an equal number of 1 spot, 2 spot, etc. coming uppermost. Toss a penny in the air and it may come down either heads or tails, but make a significant number of tosses and the heads or tails will about even up. This is the operation of the law of average. But both the average and the single toss come under the law of cause and effect. If we were able to examine into the preceding causes, it would be clearly seen that it was simply impossible for the die to fall other than it did, under the same circumstances at the same time. Given the same causes, the same results will follow. There is always a cause and a because to every event. Nothing ever happens without a cause, or rather a chain of causes. Some confusion has arisen in the minds of persons considering this principle, from the fact that they were able to explain how one thing could cause another thing, that is, be the creator of the second thing. As a matter of fact, no thing ever causes or creates another thing. Cause and effect deals merely with events. An event is that which comes, arrives, or happens as a result of or consequent of some preceding event. No event creates another event, but is merely a preceding link in the great orderly chain of events following the creative energy of the all. There is continuity between all events precedent, consequent, and subsequent. There is a relation that existing between everything that has gone before and everything that follows. A stone is dislodged from a mountainside and crashes through a roof of a cottage in the valley below. At first sight, we regard this as a chance effect, but when we examine the matter, we find a great chain of causes behind it. In the first place, there was the rain, which softened the earth supporting the stone, and which allowed it to fall. Then back of that, there was the influence of the sun, other rains, etc., which gradually disintegrated the piece of rock from a larger piece. Then there were the causes which led to the formation of the mountain, and its upheaval by convulsions of nature, and so on ad infinitum. Then we might follow up the causes behind the rain, etc. Then we might consider the existence of the roof. In short, we would find ourselves involved in a mesh of cause and effect, from which we would soon strive to extricate ourselves. Just as a man has 2 parents and 4 grandparents and 8 great-grandparents and 16 great-great-grandparents and so on until when, say, 40 generations are calculated, the number of ancestors runs into millions, so it is with the number of causes behind even the most trifling event or phenomena, such as the passage of a tiny speck of soot before your eye. It is not an easy matter to trace the bit of soot back to the early period of the world's history when it formed a part of a massive tree trunk, which was afterward converted into coal and so on, until as a speck of soot it now passes before your vision on its way to other adventures, and a mighty chain of events, causes, and effects brought it to its present condition, and the latter is but one of the chain of events which will go to produce other events hundreds of years from now. One of the series of events arising from a tiny bit of soot was the writing of these lines, which caused the typesetter to perform certain work, the proofreader to do likewise, and which will arouse certain thoughts in your minds and that of others, which in turn will affect others, and so on and so on and on. Beyond the ability of man to think further, and all from the passage of a tiny bit of soot, all of which shows the relativity and association of things, and the further fact that there is no great, there is no small in the mind that causeth all. Stop to think a moment. If a certain man had not met a certain maid, away back in a dim period of the Stone Age, you who are now reading these lines would not now be here. And if perhaps the same couple had failed to meet, we who now write these lines would not now be here. And the very act of writing on our part and the act of reading on yours will affect not only the respective lives of yourself and others, but will also have a direct or indirect effect upon many other people now living and who will live in the ages to come. Every thought we think, every act we perform, has its direct and indirect results which fit into the great chain of cause and effect. We do not wish to enter into a consideration of free will or determinism in this work, for various reasons. Among the many reasons is the principal one that neither side of the controversy is entirely right. In fact, both sides are partially right, according to the Hermetic teaching. The principle of polarity shows that we are but half-truths, the opposing poles of truth. The teachings are that a man may be both free and yet bound by necessity, depending upon the meaning of the terms, and the height of truth from which the matter is examined. The ancient writers express the matter thus: the further the creation is from the center, the more it is bound. The nearer the center it reaches, the nearer free it is. The majority of people are more or less the slaves of heredity, environment, etc., and manifest very little freedom. They are swayed by the opinions, customs, and thoughts of the outside world, and also by their emotions, feelings, moods, etc. They manifest no mastery worthy of the name. They indulgently repudiate this assertion, saying, "Why, I certainly am free to act and do as I please. I do just what I want to do," but they fail to explain when to rise the want to and as I please. What makes them want to do one thing in preference to another? What makes them please to do this and not do that? Is there no because to their pleasing and wanting? The master can change these pleases and wants into others at the opposing end of the mental pole. He is able to will instead of to will because of some feeling, mood, emotion, or environmental suggestion arouses a tendency or desire within him to do so. The majority of people are carried along like a falling stone, obedient to environment, outside influences, and internal moods, desires, etc. Not to speak of the desires and wills of others stronger than themselves. Heredity, environment, and suggestion carry them along without resistance on their part, or the exercise of the will. Moved like the pawns on the checkerboard of life, they play their parts and are laid aside after the game is over. But the masters, knowing the rules of the game, rise above the plane of material life, and placing themselves in touch with the higher powers of their nature, dominate their own moods, characters, qualities, and polarity, as well as the environment surrounding them, and thus become movers in the game instead of pawns, causes instead of effects. The masters do not escape the causation of the higher planes, but fall in with the higher laws and thus master circumstances on the lower plane. Thus, they form a conscious part of the law instead of being mere blind instruments. While they serve on the higher planes, they rule on the material planes. I want to take a moment and unpack that. We don't have much left here, but as we've talked about some in the videos that I did on the other Hermetic principles, this idea of mastery. And after I complete this Kybalion series, I want to do a series dedicated to just mastering the law. And I'll sprinkle nuggets throughout all of my videos because that's what this is about. This is about how we can all become masters of this law as it's described here, where instead of being, this is essentially describing what we call the matrix, people just moving about and being moved by causes that they don't even necessarily understand. But we understand that this law is in effect and that causes could be something that happened hundreds of thousands of years ago, but all leads to where we are now. And we talk about so many of these causes in all of these different ideologies. We'll argue about different causes, not understanding that all truths are but half truths. So we can go on and on and on and swing that pendulum back and forward, back and forward. And yeah, rhythm will compensate. The measure of the swing to the right will be the measure of the swing to the left, but we won't move forward. We'll be forever swinging that pendulum. There's a way that you can separate yourself from that, and because and instead of just moving as an effect of everything that's happened, you become a cause of other effects. And not only that, the idea that your frequency, because we're all connected, everywhere, when you change your frequency and you become a cause instead of an effect, and you're moving based on the perfection that you see because you don't see things as they are, you're simply being you, simply radiating at your frequency causes shifts to happen. And I talk about it so much. When you enter a room, and people talk about when certain people enter a room, they can feel their charisma, can feel their energy, whatever. You can feel energy shift. That's you. That's everyone. We all have the power to do that. You have the power. If you're radiating at a high frequency, you have the power to raise the frequency of wherever it is you are. So now imagine you're in an apartment and you think that you're there because you don't have a certain amount of money or whatever the case may be. And you're there because you need to raise your vibration. Because when you raise your vibration, your entire complex changes and shifts. And now you start seeing things look differently. You start to see perfection that wasn't there. And now it starts to actually make itself known in this 3D. If we can all move and strive towards mastery, without any type of judgment towards a certain ideology or whatever the case may be, if we just use the tools to become our best self, man, this world begins to change overnight. All right, let's finish this out. But on higher and on lower, the law is always in operation. There is no such thing as chance. The blind goddess has been abolished by reason. We are able to see now, with eyes made clear by knowledge, that everything is governed by universal law, that the infinite number of times are but manifestations of the one great law, the law which is the all. It is true indeed that not a sparrow drops unnoticed by the mind of the all, that even the hairs on our head are numbered, as the scriptures have said. There is nothing outside of law, nothing that happens contrary to it, and yet do not make the mistake of supposing that man is but a blind automaton. Far from that. The Hermetic teachings are that man must use law to overcome laws, and that the higher will always prevail against the lower, until at last he has reached the stage in which he seeks refuge in the law itself, and last the phenomenal laws to scorn. Are you able to grasp the inner meaning of this? Now, this is so key because there's something that I see that I've been thinking for so long. All right, how is it that we overcome that? And it's this idea of these entities that we are, things like shadow governments and certain groups of individual souls who may be operating as a unit to control the masses. And I know we've all had to experience dealing with a corporation or some type of entity that it may be a person within that entity who doesn't like you, and now they can operate within that entity to cause harm to you. Or it may be rules that the entity has that workers just have to follow, and they consider it as just doing their job, but it is dangerous and damaging the souls. Government laws that are in place that are horrible, or people who are operating within their position and not and coming under the influence of fate, operating service to self, and using the entity that they're a part of to be protected in their actions against others. How do you combat that? And combat may not be the right word, because if you're operating from a position of love, it's not necessarily combating it. But if these entities, certain texts like Reality Transurfing by Vadim Zeland hints at the fact that these entities become conscious. So all these entities that we've put thought into, assigned a name to, maybe we assign certain numbers to it, the thought form becomes conscious, has its own will, and now you have to abide by certain laws, certain operations. And at a certain point, you're not even thinking your own thoughts, you're thinking the thoughts of the entity that is getting your energy, essentially, right? How do we combat that as souls, who have the power to be an effect? Yes, we all know that we can be automatons. We can operate as a part of the matrix and just go about our way and be subservient. We've all seen that. We see what the world is now, and that's what the effect that's that. But we know that we can rise above that and become a cause. We know that we can polarize ourselves to certain emotions. We know that everything moves and vibrates, and we know that we all operate within the mind of God. We know that all things are possible to us. We know that miracles are just higher levels of understanding, and that all things originate in thought, right? So we understand that if these laws are always in play, everything that we see that triggers a certain thought in us is essentially trying to create something. What is your environment creating? What is your environment creating? I believe that if we can recognize the triggers all around us that sustain everything that is wrong with society, and then on an individual level, you change your triggers, you tune out those things that cause you to radiate at a thought frequency that that gives energy to any type of destructive pendulum. It could be a radio station that you listen to that has commercials that conjure up thoughts in your mind and feelings in your mind of things that you don't want to see happen. You got to turn that off. You got to turn it off. You got to listen to something else. It don't matter if it's your favorite station or not. Go find a different way to listen to your music. That's programming, and it's called programming for a reason. And when you understand that cause and effect is always in play, all of these laws are always in play. Now you have to start paying attention to where your awareness is going. You healing, rising above the pendulums or the entities that are trying to get your energy. That's how we do it. We don't do it by fighting. We don't do it by organizing and creating more entities to control us. No, we do it by recognizing our power and by exercising our power, by harnessing our power, by becoming who we are and expressing that and not caring what anyone has to do, say, or think about it. Enough people doing that, and these entities, as powerful as they may seem, they fall. Love will conquer, I promise. I love you. I want to see the fullest expression of you. This is the spark.